Hi, my name is David Clements. I'm an attorney with Clements Law, PA here in DeLand, Florida. I'm going to take this time to kind of go over the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, also known as House Bill 6201. It's the law that went into effect in response to the coronavirus in dealing with employers providing paid time off to their employees. As a brief overview, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act was signed by President Trump on March 18th, 2020. And it basically provides emergency paid sick leave and emergency family and medical leave for employees that are affected by the coronavirus. And unlike the Family and Medical Leave Act of 1993, this covers all employers who have fewer than 500 employees. The two specific acts that I'll be talking about in some detail here today are the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act and the Emergency Family and Medical Leave Act. The important thing here to note is that this law goes into effect on April 2nd, 2020 and extends until the end of the year. The Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act requires employers to provide 2 weeks worth of paid sick leave to employees who have what's called a qualified reason. And I'll get into what that is later on. But basically for full-time employees, the employer has to provide 80 hours of paid sick leave. And for part-time employees, whatever their average hours worked over a 2-week period would be. Important note here is that there's no length of employment requirement. So if you have an employee that's worked for you for 1 day, they're entitled to this sick leave. And also, this paid leave does not carry over into the following year. Now, there are two sets of qualifying reasons for sick leave. The first set includes if the employee is subject to any federal, state, or local quarantine order, the employee has been advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine, or the employee is experiencing symptoms of COVID-19. Now, what you can get from this is that a coronavirus diagnosis is not required. And so for these qualifying reasons, the employees taking leave for these reasons are entitled to pay at their regular rate up to a maximum of $511 per day. Now, this second set of qualifying reasons doesn't really have anything to do with the employee themselves having the coronavirus, but someone around them is being affected. So if they're caring for an individual that's subject to a quarantine, or they have a son or daughter whose school or child care provider is closed or unavailable, then they qualify for paid sick leave. Now, this third reason, I'm not, at this point, who knows what that means, but later on, the Secretary of Health and Human Services is likely to provide regulations that would clarify what that means. But under these reasons, the employee is entitled to their regular pay up to a maximum of $200 per day. Now, the Emergency Family and Medical Leave Expansion Act has caused particular concern to small business owners that don't have many employees because it requires them to provide up to 12 weeks of protected leave to their employees if their employee has worked for the employer for at least 30 days prior to requesting the leave and has a qualifying reason. Now, the qualifying reason is similar to what we discussed before, but basically, if the employee is unable to work or telework, and they must provide for their children because of school closure, childcare closure, then they're entitled to this leave. Now, some industries will be affected by this more than others. Like myself, I can work from home, that's fine, but certain businesses, they run restaurants and things like that, their employees can't work remotely. So this would affect them more than other businesses. The employer can provide unpaid leave for the first 10 days of the 12-week period. However, the employee has the ability to use available PTO or other emergency paid sick leave that they have to cover that first 10 days. So although under this act, the employer doesn't have to pay for those first 10 work days, the employee can use other types of leave that they have to cover that. And during the 12-week period that is paid, the employee is entitled to 2/3 of their regular pay rate, and that pay rate is capped at $200 per day for a total of $10,000 for the entire 10-week period. Lastly, I just want to go over a few topics. First, this is a mandate on employers. They have to provide paid leave to their employees who qualify. Withholding those rights from the employees is violating this law. It's also violating minimum wage law, which would subject the employer to having to pay double wages. Under this act, the employee has rights. The employer cannot withhold those rights. Next, employers can seek reimbursement for paying for the sick leave, so keep track of it. You'll likely be reimbursed through tax credits, so keep track of how much you're paying for the sick leave, how much time your employees are taking. Also, the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act requires employers to post notice of employees' rights. This will likely be posted where you post all your other HR notices and things like that. The Secretary of Labor actually has a March 25th deadline to provide the public with what a model notice would look like. So keep an eye out for that. They'll likely post it on the Department of Labor's website. Lastly, this is a new law that allows the different federal departments to regulate it. So expect a lot of changes, a lot of regulations come out of this. That being said, things are probably going to change rapidly. So if you're doing your own research and you're reading articles that are a week or two old, it's probably old news. So look at current information. For instance, the law allows the Secretary of Labor to exempt certain small businesses from certain aspects of this act, specifically small businesses that have fewer than 50 employees. So expect things like that to come out in the near future. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Stay safe and healthy.